Hey, the Muffin here. I got a subscriber request video here for you. I'm going to do an overarching vid with what if half tracks were in Blitz. I'm not talking about the infantry transport half tracks, as those would be absolutely useless. The ones that had tank type cannon, self-propelled weapons attached to them. Now, when looking into these things would have to be, if brought into Blitz, would have to have some serious balancing changes made to them, as there's a lot of disadvantages to these things. Historically, when reading about half tracks with self-propelled weapons in general, they had disadvantages to tanks. You can't turn like a tank. They definitely don't have the armor like a tank. In World War II, the Germans had produced about 15,000 of these, and many of them were sacrificed because they would try to push these things to function and play roles like a tank, and would absolutely end up getting themselves just wrecked because of it. So if this half track were to be in Blitz, a lot of them would have to be in a tank destroyer role. What I mean by that is they cannot be in any sort of position to play like a medium, light tank, absolutely not a heavy tank. So very, very strict to a tank destroyer role, and I'll go into explain why. So first things first, half tracks cannot turn like a tank. A tank can pivot, traverse. A half track would drive more like a car because of its front-wheeled system. So you couldn't have that advantage. And that really restricts you a bit on mobility and trying to maneuver around in ways that you can really get around like a tank. The other thing is that this half-track system definitely did not have the armor. You're looking at around 10 millimeters, 10, 20 millimeters of armor. That you're obviously going to be a huge HE magnet if on the field of Blitz. So that was a huge, that's one thing you've got to be careful of. This thing doesn't have a complete, this one specifically doesn't have a complete 360-degree rotating turret because of the cab in the front. It does block that a little bit, but it was an 88 millimeter cannon. This was widely used by the Germans. The Nashorn had this. The Tiger 1 had this. The first option stock gun for the Tiger 2 has this in Blitz. The Tiger 8.8 also has this in Blitz. So a very popular gun used by the Germans. And so this gun, if I were to put this thing into Blitz, it would need to be a tank destroyer. And you'd want to play with this thing as if you literally had no armor, kind of like a Grill or a Waffenträger, something that didn't have armor. You'd want to be able to make sure you were keeping yourselves unspotted, but getting yourselves in positions to take those shots. It's a good question as far as what tier this would be. I would probably put this at a tier 6. The other thing is if these things were to be in Blitz, World of Tanks Blitz would have to do some serious rebalancing to make these things work. So typically, if a tank has a disadvantage, there's other advantages it has to help make the thing balance. So what I mean by that in terms of this half track is because it doesn't have a continuous track system allowing it to pivot and traverse, giving it that flexibility and maneuverability, it would need to have like a way greater engine power to weight ratio, which that's the other thing about these things is it has a terrible engine power to weight ratio. Right about like 9, it's pretty bad. I mean, if you look at the T95, just to give you an idea, that's like 8 in terms of engine power to weight ratio. Very, very slow. And if you have something with that kind of maneuverability, that kind of armor, this thing is going to be at a serious disadvantage, especially with it also not having that continuous track advantage. So Anyway, if this thing were to be put in Blitz, they would have to give this thing a much greater engine power to weight ratio compared to other tank destroyers. Even at Tier 6, you're looking at about 16 plus average engine power to ratio. This thing would actually need to have a much, much higher. So like 17, 18, even 19, like just a lot faster to be balanced. And then so Tier 6, still no armor. Try to keep that realistic. And then somewhat of a pivotable, obviously still have that pivotable and traversable cannon with that 88 millimeter capability. So probably at Tier 6 with some serious rebalancing. Anyway, this is the Muffin here. Hope you guys enjoyed. You guys stay cool and keep tanking.